Life, the movie Life, Eddie Murphy.
I know the movie. I love the movie.
How many times you seen the movie?
Maybe 3 times.
You sure about that?
From start to finish?
Very much so, yeah.
How many times you seen Forrest Gump?
Maybe around the same.
Titanic?
I mean, see now the thing is that you're
I'm messing with you, man.
I know you're messing with me, but the thing is that if
that does not legitimize your blackness or makes you irrelevant as far as your blackness.
I appreciate that because for a second I was trembling in my boots that I wasn't.
It's all good. It's all good.
Come on.
We had to fight to get a meal. Yeah, wrongfully accused. We had to fight to get appeals. That's why we right to get a deal. He on the team, he gotta eat, you know. Despite your skills, he been riding for the fam. You gotta light the wheels straight up. But in the past bad, work up in the trash bag. I'll pass a lot to take the test before I pass class. Yeah, and my family needed bread. I had to come correct. That's why I keep airing it out like I just passed gas.
So I haven't done a good job of setting our listeners' ears to the format of the show. Like we went from I am athlete to I am black, and that was intentional. The reason why that was intentional is because I truly believe that we're supposed to be in discussion right now. My opinion is the only discussion that we should be having right now is a discussion around the black experience. Because I think that there's a population of people that are fearful of something that they don't know. So we're talking about Black Lives Matter. We're talking about police brutality. If you don't understand the black experience, how can you then empathize? The first couple of shows with I Am Black was centered around that. But to have a great discussion, you have to have different perspectives at the table. And I'll just jump right into it. Jared, ex-teammate, a guy that I truly admire, amazing communicator, amazing voice, way more than an athlete. But Jared, your perspective, because of my belief, is something that is divisive. And the reason why I say that, because I want to make sure it's clear, is because I feel we're in this moment where people need to understand the black experience so we can then make sure that change happens. You and I talked through the comments, and then we jumped on a conversation on the phone, and I will admit that I lost my cool, and I said, I think you're a dumbass. And I said, I think you're a dumbass because of your perspective, and I was wrong, and I'll apologize again on film because I respect you so much. But it furthers my belief in why we should be having one conversation, because if we're talking about so many different things, it's divisive, and then we lose traction on that one thing. We need to change the way we police. We need to change systematic racism.
Well, I guess my question then comes, if there's a kind of a setting of a stage, hello, everybody. As soon as I walk in the door, that my comments are divisive. It's almost like you're giving me the ability to be divisive before other people hear me.
Correct.
And I think that's a part of. So what I end up asking, and I think there's 2 things here. One is who am I being divisive to? Because it seems like I may be splitting your own brain as opposed to other people. Mm-hmm. That there's questions inside your own head after you talk to me, because we didn't share these thoughts with anybody. It was me and you.
Correct.
So I think sometimes when people talk, but especially, this is my second point, is that when people ask questions, that they can come across as divisive. I don't really have a stance on any of this. I want more understanding from the people that support Black Lives Matter very vehemently, and I want to understand why they do so, because I don't understand it.
What don't you understand about Black Lives Matter and seeing George Floyd brutally killed on the streets in Minneapolis?
See, now I see those 2 things as 2 separate things, right?
But that's the only conversation.
So I guess my question, or what I start to question and start to differentiate, is the idea of Black Lives Matter as a phrase versus Black Lives Matter as ideology, right? Okay. Because the phrase I support, Black lives do matter, because I am Black, my family is Black, I'm from a bunch of Black lives. An amalgamation of Black lives is what made me.
Yeah.
Okay. So I obviously support that. Now the ideology behind the movement is what I'm questioning. And it seems to be that when people enter echo chambers, similar to situations where everybody ends up agreeing with all of their points, that there isn't this actual specific conversation about the division between ideology in the phrase.
So what is it about the Black Lives Matter movement?
Ideology. Yeah. That's what I'm concerned about, is that I think it actually holds a lot of different ideologies within it that a lot of us, including myself, even 2 years ago, that I was very ignorant of, which is communist ideologies, right? And that seems to be a word that people are afraid to say because they don't know how to talk anymore about it, right? That's why I wear it on my shirt. So I invite people that do, right? And the people that don't, I'm going to tell you what I think about that. One of the biggest things that I wanted to ask you, and I'm glad we started off this way, I've got 19 points on here that I wanted to make sure that if somebody else talked about it, that I could fully elaborate on this. One of them is, did you read any of the about of the Black Lives Matter? Did you go on their website and read any of those things?
So here's,
I say that just to say this, and I would love for you to play with this idea for as long as you guys want to. One of its initiatives is to break up the nuclear family in order for it to succeed at whatever it's trying to succeed at, which I'm not sure what that is.
I respect your opinion. I respect your thoughts. I respect the documentaries that you watch, the books that you've read. I respect the work that you've done, but we are spending so much time and wasting so much energy on ideology. Like, to me, the question is, why do we debate racism? Like,
do you believe that racism exists in America and has impacted Black people probably since the Civil Rights Movement?
I'd love to answer that question, but I was hoping somebody could tend to the idea of the ideology of Black Lives Matter and fill me in on what it is. That's what I like. That's what we first started talking about, right? I just want to figure out what the ideology is. I hear where
you're coming from in regards to you support Black Lives Matter. You don't necessarily support the movement, and I think you're making a point to leadership in this, what is the second coming of the civil rights movement, has been weak. And I could say this candidly, and I said this the first show, and I still do believe this. We don't have right now Black leaders that are stepping up to the forefront and saying, hey, let's have this rally here. Let's have this movement here. Let's support this cause. Let's support this amendment. Let's push for this legislation. But part of the reason that we don't have that leadership is, in my opinion and perspective, when we look at our leaders during the civil rights movement, you know what the example was set by the people who are against it? They killed them all. They killed the majority of them. And if you look at what's going on right now in this second coming of the civil rights movement, 3 people have been lynched and hung in their city halls. Activists, like I think we're at like 6 people who have been killed, who have been part of activism.
Yeah.
And how do we not, and yes, it's been ruled a suicide, but how do we not understand that somebody is trying to send us a message, as they always have?
Who?
The man.
But I guess that's what I'm saying, and that's why I want to get down to ideology, because if you don't outline the constructs of which you think, then the man will always be ever present and omnipotent. He will be everywhere and always, stopping you from what you want to do. So that's why I'm trying to define the bounds, so we can stop letting the concept of the man enter the constructs of our mind.
Yeah, I mean, I love all of that. Like, I'm gonna be honest, man. I like, you kind of lose me with some of that talk. I just want to have the conversation about, like, why did George Floyd die the way he died, right? Like, why? Like, go back to me, the start of this second wave of this civil rights movement, Trayvon Martin. And these are the conversations that we've been having week after week after week after week for years. Now we just have social media and we have footage to capture it. So for me, it's just like, I get all of that, and I think there's so much discussion around that, and that's why I want to expand it. But when you look at racism, systemic racism in America, like, that exists, and that's the discussion I want to have.
Sure, and me speaking specifically to the group that's leading the charge on solving that issue, I want to find out what they believe. And when I go read about what they believe, so I could support it or not support it, what it talks about is they're willing to break up the American nuclear family. That's something that you possess, Brandon. Mm-hmm. You've got a nuclear family. Is that important to you?
I don't know what the hell a nuclear family is.
A mother and a father and children.
Okay, thank you for educating me on that. I don't know. I just, for me, it's like, I don't care about a movement. When I hear about Black Lives Matter, I care about, like, I take it literal. So I'm not following leaders. I'm not following movements. I'm
I
following,
think that's a part of the issue.
I'm following Black Lives Matter, like the literal thought of that, where if I am killed in the streets, do you care? The reality is like, this is not why I feel I'm here in this world, why I was born. I feel like I was created by Jesus Christ to help bridge the gap in the mental health community. That's where my genius lie. Okay. But there comes a point when it comes to a civil rights movement and it comes down to people and people dying, I feel like we all play a role there. So when we talk about like movements and leaders and the civil rights thing, that's not me. I want to lean on Malcolm Jenkins. I want to lean on Colin Kaepernick. So for me, it's all literal. It's like, no, I grew up in these neighborhoods. I've been profiled before. I've called the police and the police came and they told me to get on the ground. Why? I'm the one that called you. So I'm thinking very literal. The things that we're seeing play out every single week, still to this day.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
No, of course. Those sound like inflammatory issues of your cultural experience, right?
Yeah.
These are inflammatory issues. Now, what I'm trying to figure out is if looking at those specific inflammatory issues is going to actually quell anything systemically. What I'm saying is that I'm not trying to lead away from your points, Brandon. I'm just trying to get deeper into the same point.
To create the awareness that these things exist and these are the experience. And Brandon brought up something, and I think that both of you, all of you can talk about this, the Black experience, helping people understand what the Black experience is, especially in this George Floyd era. We have dealt with systemic racism. We have dealt with police brutality for decades, but not everybody's experience is the same.
Yeah.
For instance, Fred's children might not live the same life that Fred is living, or might not see the same experiences or have the same opportunities that Fred is living.
And what does that have to do with solving the issues of that Black Lives Matter is highlighting?
I think the issue that we're having a discussion, and I hear your points.
I'm asking a question.
Your question and your concern is, okay, Black Lives Matters, we're throwing it up and it's a hashtag and it's a movement.
What does it consist of? I want to support it. I got a lot of energy. I'm not
Here's the
playing
thing,
football anymore.
we don't even know who
I want to get out there. I want to do something.
We don't even know who the leader is.
But that's my point, is
Yeah,
that
that's
understanding the
irrelevant.
ideology. What's up?
It's as simple as grabbing a book on poverty and see where we start, what our plight is. Not everyone really gives a about understanding why we are where we are. You talk about slavery, that was 400 years ago. Who gives a No, those slave owners, the masters, they're not alive. Slaves aren't alive, but we're descendants of slaves. We know they only talk about PTSD when they talk about military and the people that protect the country. What about our trauma? So it's when you talk about Black Lives Matter, I really think that, it's a billboard, but I like the Black experience better, more so than Black Lives Matter. To me, it is a tag. But truthfully, Black lives do matter, and people have to understand.
But that's my whole question about separating.
But I do think that, for example, people that, they go back and say, well, Colin Kaepernick, he disrespected the flag. Those are the same group of people that tend to pretend they don't understand what we mean by Black Lives Matter. You really got to dig in and say, these people for however many hundreds of years, they built this country on their back, and we haven't given them their due.
I totally agree. I'm in agreement with all of this.
I care less about. I understand the movement,
but that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I don't care if it's a nonprofit who's running it,
where the money goes to.
I don't give a about that. I care about the message.
Hold on, but okay,
it's
so
a message.
Great, yes. So
hear our cry. We're crying. We're saying
like,
270 million of
though. Like this is right. Like this is why I feel like it's divisive, because, and it's my opinion. I just feel like the experience, and there's different Black experiences. Not every Black person grows up poor. Not every Black person grows up in a neighborhood where there's people selling drugs. There's different Black experiences. But to hear the Black experience, I think is crucial so we can gain understanding. All of us are having these conversations on the phones, on Zoom calls, with our boys, with our friends, with our families about, faith, about the flag. And when I look at it, Fred, it's kind of back to you. It's like, I what I care about is like, man, please stop profiling our children, right? So if right now if everybody's saying Black Lives Matter, police brutality, we want change, and bills are being passed, then I think it's a job well done. Right. If people are standing up and finally, for the first time ever, we have our white brothers and sisters that we grew up with who aren't racist, just love us, but they're finally using their platforms.
They're finally ask us about our experiences.
I think we win there, Jared. That's why, like, I love your perspective, because to be honest with you, I lived on that side of the street for a very long time.
What side is that?
To me, it's like I want to be objective.
That's honestly all I've been trying to do, is figure out what's the difference between the phrase Black Lives Matter, which I definitely agree with, and the ideology behind Black Lives Matter. There's two different things, and that's why I keep bringing it up. Right, I'm not trying to get off topic. I am being very objective in my speech, because I want to define those things, and I want to find out what you think the ideology behind Black Lives Matter is.
But I guess where I'm struggling, where I struggle with this, and again, it's time to expand the conversation. Yeah. But where I struggle with this is like when I'm talking to you and I ask you, I'm like, Jared, you're mixed, but you're a black man. Yeah. You got dreads, big. You're huge.
One drop rule.
You could be intimidating, I feel. And I asked you, I said, man, you went to Penn State. And I'm like, so you've never been profiled in Happy Valley. Jared, I also said in South Beach when you played for the Dolphins, which is kind of notorious for profiling black men, okay? And I said, you've never been profiled in South Beach. You said, well, how do I know that they profiled me because I'm tall and black? I'd never had that experience.
Well, no, I guess what I'm saying is that the two things that you just associated with being black is big and intimidating. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why?
Because that's how
the nature of it.
But I guess what I'm saying is that if somebody from another race, especially white, isn't saying that to you, then that's a projection of your own thoughts onto those people.
But it goes back to the experience, because it happens.
Sure,
and
if
it happens more
but
than
unless people are explicitly saying you're scary because you're black, you're big because you're black.
That doesn't say that when I get out of my $300,000 Mercedes SLS, gold wings. White lady sees me, lock my door, boop, boop. And then they go to the other side of the street. Mm-hmm. That's not saying that I'm scary.
But how do you know that's because of your race? I got to a point
where it's a game for my wife and I, Jared, where I'm walking down the streets of Chicago, walking down the streets in New York, and a white lady passing by me clenches her purse.
That's happened to me and my father plenty of times.
So for me, what I started doing in 2016, I started doing the same thing that they did. So if they clenched their purse, I would clench act like I'm clenching my purse. Or if they ran across the street, I would run across the street. So to me, no, they're not explicitly saying that, you're scary, you're big and black and you're scary, but your actions.
Of course, but who's giving you the verbiage? That's yourself.
Are they going to give you the verbiage, though, Jared?
No, they're not. But I guess that's what I'm saying. And then, and one of the stories that you told me.
My experiences are giving me the verbiage.
No, of course. And one of your stories.
I'm building off those experiences.
One of your stories, I wish I could put a digital image in the middle of the four of us and we could watch you tell it the same exact way that you did before, which was when you were in Boston, you felt that in a neighborhood where they don't lock their doors, that you're walking down the street and you had the cops called on you multiple times, or there were inferences of that, right? When you're walking behind a woman, walking with her baby in a park, right? That she almost threw her baby in the bushes.
She pushed the stroller. I'm glad so I can clarify.
Okay, yes. So what I'm saying is that, did that woman turn around and say, because you said,
right.
Oh my God, you said she thought I was going to rape her.
But she clearly thought I was going to harm her. You're right.
Sure, but who thought of the word rape?
In my mind.
Thank you.
Over
Thank you.
So is that wrong? Tell me why it's wrong.
Why that's wrong? Because you're making an inflammatory. Throwing a baby in the bushes out of being scared is different than almost throwing a baby in the bushes. What I'm saying is that your sentiments, which may be totally on point, are still building the terminology in the constructs of which you see white people, that they're scared of you. It's almost like you want them to be scared of you.
I don't want them to be scared of me, but I'm building those constructs based on my life experiences.
Sure, but
that was a scarring. That's something that I can never unsee in my life and never unexperience in my life, and it was caused by. And I remember her saying, I thought you were going to harm me. You're right. She did not say you're going to rape me. But in my mind, over
So then what made you say that on the podcast a couple weeks ago?
Because over 20 years, over 20 years, yeah, I've built it. She said,
But the clarity came right now.
no, the clarity came when you posted under it, and I thought to myself, like,
I'm glad I could provide that.
No, I mean, this is the issue, is that, like, right? Because are you invalidating his experience? Like, yeah, like to be like literal with like what someone is thinking. You know what I mean? Like, come on, man. We know that when we get out of our cars, we're walking down the streets, you hear those stories over and over again, whether it's from the average person.
If I were to see
or
Omar get out of the car, I'm not scared of him.
well, that's because you're 300 pounds.
Okay, well then look at this DNA. I mean, I'm not scared of
But I also
Omar.
asked you the question. I also asked you the question too, which I thought was interesting. I asked Jared the question about, and this was when we were on the phone, and I said, Jared, so you mean to tell me that there isn't any issues in the NFL? There's 32 owners. We have not one black owner. The league is made up of over 70% minorities, but in positions of power, there's how many?
There's 2 GMs and 4 head coaches.
So there's not an issue there. And you use the term, well, did an owner explicitly come out and say that, we're racist, right?
Yeah, it's that is a question. Did an owner ever say explicitly, yeah, we're not hiring black coaches? And I think the other point is that you made a really good point that the NFL is 70% black.
Yeah.
Come on, bruh. So I wanted to hear that, and I wanted to hear that again in this context, and I especially want to hear from Fred, because I think he's had more experience around NFL organizations. But what I wanted to hear is, okay, well, if 70% of the NFL is black players, then what's a number that's going to satisfy the given black population of the amount of coaches that should be in the league? Is it 70% of the coaches? Mm-hmm. What is it? What's the number that's going to quell your anger about coaches?
A percentage that reflects society, to me.
Okay, so 70% society?
Society.
Society is 13%.
Okay, society is...
So are you sure you want 13% or do you want 70%?
No, I don't need 70%.
But see, this is where I feel like it's divisive and like we get off track, but it's cool.
Pin a number down, it's no longer divisive.
It's not literal. It's that the best man should get the job, but when you look at systemic racism, it's off of, they make decisions off of our race and our traits. So you mean to tell me that we don't have black position coaches that can be
offensive coordinators,
defensive coordinators for special teams?
I'll tell you.
You don't think
I
that
never said
those
that.
coordinators that we have they're not qualified to be a head coach?
Never said that.
So why is it in 2002 the Rooney Rule was put in place to protect the minority and also the NFL, but nothing has changed? We're in 2020 and the numbers are still the same.
2007, Miami Dolphins are hiring for head coaches after Nick Saban steps aside. Mike Tomlin interviews, Cam Cameron interviews. Mike Tomlin, this is his first interview as a head coach, blows the interview out of the water. Thoroughly impressive. Cam Cameron interviews, not so much. I don't know if you guys have ever met Cam Cameron, but it's like you're meeting a librarian. He comes back. They say, you know what? Maybe Cam, he had a game to play the next week. Maybe we didn't get the best impression of him. Let's bring him back. Interviews him again. Okay. But you know what? When they sit down in their meeting, they say, you know what? That Mike Tomlin, he's a good assistant in Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but he might be too hip hop for...
Who said that?
The decision makers.
They said it out loud?
Yes, they said it out loud.
They said he's too hip hop.
Back in 2007.
Where was this said?
It's documented. Look it up.
Please send it to me.
Okay.
Also, do you know what the owner Richardson and the Carolina Panthers said to Cam Newton when he was drafted?
Well, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is now we're all throwing everything into this nuclear head, this head of all the decisions between the owners. I can see Ross, right? The owner of the Dolphins.
He wasn't owner then, but yes.
But either way, I guess what I'm saying is that I can see an owner, and I think one of the biggest kind of detriments of his ownership is that I think he hires to what's familiar to him, not necessarily to his players. Okay, so let's talk about specifically solving that, or you speaking specifically to that. Let's solve that issue one by one.
He's addressing. He's the only owner that has a African American GM and an African American head.
Well, here's
coach.
what I would say. This conversation is big. We're expanding this conversation. We're diving deep.
Is there a number that would satisfy?
To me, it's not a number, Jared. To me, it's it's what Martin Luther King said, right? not off of the color of their skin, but the content of their character. I just feel like whether it's faith, and Reese and I had this discussion where we probably spent 2 hours, maybe 3 weeks ago. And I was like, bro, I don't think that faith plays a part in this discussion right now. It reminds me of like Drew Brees hijacking the conversation. Let's make it about the flag. Let's make it about faith. Let's make it about black on black crime and all these other things that it matters, but just not right now.
I don't think people have a choice whether they're imparting their beliefs on people or not. I think you have a belief. Even atheists have beliefs.
Sure.
Right? And I guess that's what I'm saying. And I think, I'm not sure if we talked about that right before we got on.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is that like, no matter what you're saying or what you're doing, my uncle, right? He grew up Catholic, right? He became, I think he associates himself with Marxism, went to a Marxist country, went to Vietnam, got a wife from a communist country, a Vietnamese wife. Beautiful child that they produced. Awesome uncle, takes me in a lot of great places. But a majority of the things that he does, it seems like he's not Catholic. That's just as much as being Catholic when you're saying, I'm not Catholic. You're still using a belief system to describe what you are or aren't. So my thing is that if I could clear that up and kind of make that legible for all of us to play with, is what are the constructs of blackness? Are they knowing quotes from movies? What is that? Is there a generative culture that exists before slavery or before media? Because I think one of the biggest issues with black culture is that it's grown side by side with commerce, capitalism, and media. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I don't think that we can separate our own culture from those three things. And I think that's a huge issue, that it's not self-generated. It's generated by corporations that aren't black. That's my issue.
Wow, that's really interesting that you feel that, you know, you look at the black culture as just like purely economics, like the business around.
And we're not
culture.
making the most money off of it. Yeah.
Wow.
That I honestly think that.
Because I don't see. To me, it's not about that. I do think that when you look at our culture, it's rich. When you look at our culture, there's so much flavor.
Strong.
So it's strong. So I disagree with you
but
there.
Do you want equity?
But when we talk about the business of it, yes. But that's exactly what we're talking about. Why aren't we participating in the success of our music, in the success of our cooking, in the success of our ideas? That's why we're having this discussion.
Yeah, I think black culture is more generative than it is equitable of their own culture. They generate culture. They generate things. They generate money. They generate great amount of profit. No question. Probably more than anybody else in America. But the culture doesn't seem to have the constructs that make it equitable for themselves.
But see, this is why I think this conversation is so powerful. You look what happened with the Jewish culture, and then how they galvanized their culture, their community, and came together. Mm-hmm. That's what's happening in our culture right now. Mm-hmm. So now we're starting to see change, but there's conversations being had around the power of the black dollar and how we need to. It's not about segregation. It's not about only spend money with the black person. It's about, hey, there's a successful black person or a black person, entrepreneur that's trying to do something, support them. Right. Being intentional in that, like other cultures have done.
I think that there's a perversion. I think there's something that we step back from and look at, because with everything pure, there comes an agenda of perversion there. I think that there's nothing wrong with having a solidified foundation of black culture, black experience, as we started off this conversation talking about. But I also know that there's always, wherever there's something, a movement, whatever you want to call it, a Black Lives Matter or whatever, wherever there's something that starts off as pure, it always has somebody from the outside or some kind of demonic, I would say demonic force.
What's pure about Black Lives Matter?
Political, yeah, whatever.
What's pure about Black Lives Matter?
I'm not talking, I'm just saying like a movement. I'm not here to build on that or take away from that. I'm just saying that there's a perversion that takes place that comes in and turns it sideways. That, you know what I'm saying? Even the rioting, we're not talking about that, but that happened. And when you look on the media and things like that, you see people question. You guys are well off, right? Do you know anybody from where you're from, where you grew up in Louisiana, that has a forklift?
No.
Okay, so when you look at these movements that are taking place with the riots, you see forklifts of bricks on pallets brought to a situation. That is what I talk about, what I mean about a perversion that took place.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody manipulated the purity of a protest and made it into a riot, and somebody's maximizing off of it. And this is where I wish that we would elevate our way of thinking and not take, because right now we're passionate, and we've always been passionate. Black people, we are some movers and shakers. People know that. But that passion without direction equals frustration, and there's a loss at the end of that.
No
thing.
question. I'm totally in agreement with you in terms of bricks showing up, weird people of different
that's
credos.
The perversion I'm talking about. That's the manipulation I'm talking about.
No, of course. But I guess my question is that if Black Lives Matter and the movements and the actual physical movements that are part of that, this movement, this ideological movement, right, saying that we need this movement and this change, if this is considered the resistance, then what happens when Target donates 10 million? When Bank of America donates 100 million.
I don't care about that.
Why? Because you're no longer the resistance. You're no longer the resistance.
I want to look at your chart. And that's one of the things I said. Keep your money in your pocket. Okay, let us participate in your success.
Yes,
what I want to see is that you are actively interviewing Black executives in different positions. I want to see that you are giving us a seat at the table. Why are you marketing to me and you don't even know my culture?
Listen, Jared, where you from?
I'm from Pennsylvania.
You're from Pennsylvania, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm from Louisiana. All right. I hear what you're saying.
Do you?
I hear what you're saying.
What am I saying?
Let me finish, bro. Let me finish. I hear what you're saying, but my experience is going to be different from yours. All right. I'm from the South. Louisiana is one of the worst places you can be to be a Black man. All right. There are numerous places in that state where you don't want to get out your car and get gas. You understand what I'm saying? So what you're used to and what I'm used to is going to be totally different.
Sure.
I'm like everybody else. I hear what you're saying about the Black Lives Matter and what does it mean and what does it stand for. To me, it's a cry. It's to get the other side to open their eyes and listen. Hear what we're saying. You know what I'm saying? So
Do you think it's effective?
I think it is.
If Bank of America is an oppressor of this system, if Target, if Nike, if these multi-billion dollar corporations are at the head of this system in which are oppressing us as Black people, then why are we taking the money from those exact people that are supposed to be the oppressors?
So when you say,
what is the resistance? Where's the front lines of the resistance?
So I think that it's easy for us to lead with our pockets. To me, that means nothing. Like I call out Lululemon. They talked about they were going to donate $100,000. An adequate executive to lead a charge and actually provoke change is probably going to come in around $250,000, right? So like a lot of people lead with that, and that's PR. We have to weed through that fluff. But you asked the question, and Reggie, you sent this in not too long ago on Friday. Within 10 days of sustained protests, Minneapolis bans use of chokeholds, saves a life. Charges are upgraded against officer this and officer that and his accomplices. Dallas adopts a duty to intervene rule that requires officers to stop other cops who are engaging in inappropriate use of force. New Jersey's Attorney General said that state will update its use of force guidelines for the first time in 2 decades. And it goes on and on and on. Reggie sent over probably 50 things that has changed since we've been protesting and saying Black Lives Matter. Okay. In Canada, protesters were also grieving for Black Lives Lost. In Denmark, protesters were heard chanting, "No justice, no peace." You go back to the 1963 protests, and we were saying the same thing. No justice, no peace.
You
go to the protests in
Athens,
LA.
Greece.
No justice,
Canada, New
peace.
Zealand.
But me
like,
asking its effectiveness is not me trying to demean its effectiveness. I'm asking you to tell me what your parameters of effectiveness are. That's all I'm doing. I'm not demeaning the point of legalities changing and laws changing. I'm not demeaning that. What is going to satisfy you for change? Because if there were changes made in 1963, and we're saying the same thing now, did it change enough? And are we falling into the same thing of where it's not going to change enough again?
I'm gonna tell you this. I'm 41 years old. For the first time, I feel like people are listening.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's a start. We couldn't get that at first, right? So if it's Black Lives Matter, that's the head of that, I'm all for it.
Even if it breaks up the nuclear family that you have.
And you say nuclear family is a mother and dad?
Mother, father, children.
Mother, father, children.
Ain't nobody breaking up my family.
Yeah,
But I guess that's what I'm saying.
It's not. How is it going to break up your family?
Yeah.
How is it going to break up a black family?
Because it's also a part of the doctrines is breaking apart of the patriarchal ideology that is consistent with Christianity, and that's what they want to break apart. They're breaking apart the constructs that have controlled people's morals, so they can build new morals. That's how you build new structures of belief and new governments, is that you deconstruct the former thing so you can build a new one.
We want to deconstruct government. We want to deconstruct our
But on their
school
website,
system.
they say that they're willing to break apart religious ideologies as well as the nuclear family in the end goal. So their means are justified. The means to the end are justified in order for whatever the end goal is of Black Lives Matter, which I don't think anybody in this room can actually say anything.
It's not clarified. Right now, I agree with what Reggie said.
On the website, it's clarified.
No, I'm just saying the end goal of what we're striving for as a people. I think that it's not clarified. I think right now, I agree with what you said. It's the first time in African American history in America since '63 and all the protests there that there's actually movement happening, seemingly in favor of what's being asked here, is that we would have a voice. That's the thing. I do agree that there's a lot more work to be done. I don't think anybody's disagreeing with that. And I just think that we were talking about when we had our conversation I was at an end game when we talked about faith. You were like, hey, listen, that's important, but right now we need to solve the issue. The current issue that's in front of us was police brutality. That's what we're talking about. I think you're onto something where you're looking at the construction of what this organization specifically is bringing to the table, what they're doing. And I think you're seeing something there. And that's why I'm grateful to be on this panel, because there's something that every single one of us, all these views, Omar in here, Fred in here, that everybody has something to say that's constructive to bring to the table. I think that is when you bring in the divisive nature, whatever that looks like, because I believe you have to sometimes have some friction in order to have some clarity.
Absolutely.
Right? I don't, me personally sitting over here from a faith perspective, because that's where I look at things from, I don't see the wrong in this conversation. I see what you're saying. I see that there's a movement. I see that there's some information, because we're passionate people, because we've gotten around it. We're running with the information we're given right now. And I don't know where we're running, but we're running. And for the first time, we got some traction. We got some momentum.
We got some movement. The train is moving.
But here's where I would say, as an African-American, here's where we have to go farther, because this movement today, there's been movements before. The danger in what was happening right now is that there'll be another movement and another movement. The thing about movements, they start and they stop. The solidified traction of change is what we need to put our hand on. Everybody that you've heard and you've heard and you've heard that's gotten out and spoken against these, from like people like Killer Mike and these other influencers, everybody's saying, listen, we got to have a plan. Got to have a plan. Everybody's saying this. The commonality is get a plan.
So let me ask this question. And I go back to you because you literally drove down here from Pennsylvania to be on our show, and I so appreciate it so much. I love it.
Appreciate that.
You understand that one?
You are now now the leader of Black Lives Matter. Lead us. What do we do? How do we go from here?
Come on now, preach.
Well, now that I've been appointed, and it's very weird that you would appoint a half white guy from Pennsylvania, even though I don't know the quotes of life.
It's the locks. We
and
forgive
I've seen
you.
Titanic
we're forgiving
more than life.
Bro, Jared, you got to know, black people by nature, we're forgiving.
You are the leader of Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
We want to expand the conversation. We want change. Jared, what do we do?
First thing we're taking off the website is the destruction of the nuclear family, because I think the lack of black males in young males' lives is one of the biggest issues in the black community. So we're taking that off the website.
Okay.
We're actually promoting the nuclear family.
Come on.
That's one. Two, we're actually going to start talking about insulating our economic needs and production. We're going to insulate it. We need to we need to unbastardize the word segregation, and you actually need to insulate your money within your culture and your community. Now, if it comes down to dating outside of your race, that's where I think a doctrine comes into play. Reintroduce the idea of having a faith into the black community. We need some type of governing doctrine when you know that you're stepping out of line as a black person, or whether you're doing something good as a black person. That creates morality. Right? When you create good and bad, you create morality. There's a heaven and a hell. There's a dark and a light. All of these things, right?
But it seems like you believe in God.
Yeah, I believe God in God. Yes.
So would you say that you're searching?
No question. I think that's
Hands
the only
down.
truth is to
Yeah.
search for the truth. I think the truest truth is the search.
So here's what I would say to this conversation, right? And because I am a Christian, I gave my life to Christ. You were actually with me.
But you
at
put
my
a
lowest
pause
of
on
lows. I did put a pause.
then
to
that's
that.
not being a Christian.
Let me tell you why I put a pause to that. Because I'm actually I believe that I believe in divine mentorship. And when you look at Jesus and what he did, he healed before he did a miracle, right? So right now, when you have someone saying that I cannot breathe, you fix that problem first before we go to all these other topics, whether it's about the flag, whether it's about black on black crime, and all these other things that I believe is divisive. Because as a Christian, what I believe is I don't see black and white. I see your heart. And I have a unique perspective because I grew up on both sides of the track. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Hold on. Where there was one white family in my neighborhood. Then I moved to Orlando, Florida, Seminole County, where Trayvon Martin's life was tragically taken from him. And we were one of 5 black families in that neighborhood, okay? But the discussions that we had was so eye-opening. I couldn't understand why they were so different, okay? So for me, when I look at this conversation, it's hard because all I want to say is if you attach yourself to Jesus Christ, he is the ultimate healer, right? Because as a Christian, we talk about going on mission trips. We travel the world, we travel the country, going into some of the most broken and most devastating and scariest neighborhoods and slums and hoods around the world. But a Christian goes in there, they may be fearful, but they're non-judgmental. So if I see a black man, if I see a white person, I'll approach them the same.
But that's my issue is that you literally just said that you don't see in the constructs of black and white, but then you still address coaches, you still address percentages of coaches, percentages of quarterbacks by the color of their skin.
Because there's a problem. Like we have to
But those are contradictory statements.
No, it's not. It's not because right now there are people being oppressed.
Sure.
And when we talk about whether the NFL or if we talk about women and corporate America, like these are facts. This is black and white. So we have to fix that. And the way to fix that, I don't care about your heart because God's the only one that can heal your heart. I think about the system, right? That's what I want to change because I'm not going to waste time on your heart. I will have a conversation with you. Then
I think what you kind of just went and I think the reason that I want to take as much time to point out what was going on is because I love you, Brandon. I love you because we have similar experiences. But the thing is that you just went in a circle. And you just contradicted the last 3 things you said.
No, the reason why, because I go back to this phrase, okay? Before Jesus did a miracle, he healed them. You got to heal me first. There's a lot of people that don't understand the system of treatment and healing, okay? So there's a certain way that you approach it. The only reason why I was able to be radically transformed was 2 reasons. One, because I truly believe I am faith-based. I believe in Jesus. People have different beliefs, and that's fine. But I also got the help I needed. There's so much to go into that. So when we talk about this situation, I think that you just have to take your knee off my neck, and I just want to breathe. And then once I can breathe, and I'm not in that position again, then we can start talking about all these other things. Yeah, talk to me about like how I can get off drugs. Talk to me about black on black crime. Talk to me about the flag. But right now I just need your knee off my neck.